welcome to the deep dive. We're not just scratching the surface today.
No, definitely not.
We're going deep into construction projects, specifically that really critical balance between time, cost, and quality.
Exactly. And we've got some great material you shared that really unpacks how contractors handle this juggling act. Our goal,
Yeah.
to pull out the key insights on managing these three, let's call them pillars of project success.
Okay, let's jump straight in. The material kicks off with a kind of core process. Track, evaluate, control. Sounds simple enough, but what's that actually mean on a busy construction site?
Well, think of it like a constant loop. First, tracking is about seeing what's really happening versus the plan the contractor is always monitoring.
Right.
Then, evaluation. You take that real-world data and compare it to your targets. And the key here, the material stresses this, is those targets, the original cost estimate, the master schedule, they aren't just guesses. They're the benchmarks.
So they're not just filed away after the bid, they're active tools.
Absolutely. They become the measuring stick. You compare actuals to the baseline, and boom, potential problems light up. Because, if you're not tracking and evaluating properly, well, you're kind of lost.
Flying blind.
Exactly, which leads straight to step 3, control. Spot a problem, make a plan, get things back on track.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, let's talk time. The clock's always ticking on these projects. The material really hammers home keeping that schedule updated. Why is it such a high-pressure element?
Well, first off, time is literally money in construction, more than in many industries, maybe. If you run late, you can face liquidated damages.
Ah, the penalty clauses.
Right. Big financial hits for every day you're over schedule. It eats directly into profit. But beyond that, the schedule is how you coordinate everything, all the different trades, deliveries, inspections. It's the backbone. Plus, you learn from delays, right? Understanding why something slipped helps you plan better next time.
So the contractor is not just passively watching the calendar. The material mentioned very active monitoring.
Oh, definitely. They're checking, is activity A on track? Is activity B finished? But more than that, they're looking for the potential logjams, the bottlenecks, especially anything that could delay the whole show. Which brings us to the critical path.
The critical path. Okay, for anyone listening who isn't deep in project management, what's the simple idea there?
Imagine like a chain of dominoes. Each task has to fall before the next one can start, and there's no extra space between them. That sequence, the longest path through the project with zero slack, that's your critical path.
Zero slack, zero wiggle room.
Precisely. If any task on that specific path gets delayed, the whole project finish date slips. Simple as that. And, they're also watching external stuff like, is the weather messing things up? Are deliveries late? All noted.
And if a delay happens, it's not just, oops, we're late. It's detective work, right? Finding the root cause. The material listed some common culprits.
Exactly right. Was the original plan maybe a bit too optimistic? Is there a supervision issue hitting productivity? Maybe the crews aren't skilled enough or simply understaffed. Or perhaps essential equipment just isn't available when needed. You have to know the why.
Okay, so you find the why. What can the contractor actually do to get back on track? What levers can they pull?
Several options. They might resequence some of the upcoming work, find a more efficient order. If a sub is falling behind, the GC might even step in with their own crews.
Really? Take over the work?
Sometimes, yeah, if it's critical. And then there's what the material calls crashing the schedule.
Crashing the schedule sounds intense, like you said, hitting the panic button.
Well, maybe calculated panic button. It basically means spending money to speed things up and buy back time. Think authorizing overtime, bringing in extra crews for certain tasks, maybe even running double shifts.
Okay, but overtime, extra crews, that all costs more, surely.
Oh, absolutely. That's the trade-off. Crashing costs more directly, more labor hours, potentially premium rates. But, and this is the key insight, saving time can also save money on indirect costs.
Like site overheads, management time.
Exactly. Security, temporary facilities, project management staff. Those costs run daily, so shortening the project saves on those. The contractor has to do the math. What's the most cost-effective way to speed up? Which activities give the best bang for the buck in terms of time saved versus extra cost? It's a strategic decision.
Got it. Let's shift focus to the money side, managing cost. The material talks about the initial bid being refined into a cost baseline during pre-construction and buyout. Why is sticking to this baseline so vital?
Well, it's the financial roadmap, isn't it? The contractor is watching the actual spending against this baseline constantly. The big reason, profit. Exceed the bid price, and your profit margin shrinks or disappears.
Obvious but crucial.
Right. It also helps pinpoint if a specific subcontractor is blowing their budget. And it's essential for tracking the cost impact if the owner requests changes to the work. Plus, the owner needs to see where their money is going, so regular cost reporting is standard.
The material mentioned cost codes. How do those work? What are they for?
Think of cost codes as detailed labels for every single dollar spent. They often line up with a standard system like the CSI master format, which is sort of like a universal library index for construction elements and trades. Helps everyone speak the same language.
Like Dewey Decimal for building?
Yeah, something like that. Or the contractor might use their own system. But the point is, every invoice, every labor hour, every rental gets tagged with a code. So you can see exactly where money is going, labor versus materials, this trade versus that trade, direct costs versus indirects.
So it's not just one big bucket labeled concrete. You can drill down.
Exactly. The material uses the example of a concrete slab on grade. Just knowing slab on grade is over budget isn't super helpful. But if your codes break it down into concrete material cost, rebar cost, formwork cost, labor for each, then you can see where the overrun is happening.
Ah, okay. Maybe the rebar estimate was off, or maybe labor took longer than planned.
Precisely. That level of detail is what you need for real control.
And how often are these cost reports generated?
Usually at least monthly. They're tied into the requests for payment, the progress payments. But smart contractors often do more frequent internal checks, maybe even cash flow forecasts projecting costs to date. And importantly, costs still needed to finish the job.
So it's okay if one small item is over, as long as the whole project stays on budget.
Generally, yes, you expect some give and take between line items. The overall goal, as the material states, is to keep the total project cost within that baseline budget.
Okay, now for the tricky one. Quality. The material points out it's not as easily quantifiable as time or cost. It's more qualitative. How do you manage something that feels subjective?
That is the challenge. But the key point from the material is that construction quality isn't just opinion. It's defined, often very precisely, in the contract documents.
The legal agreement.
Right. The plans, the specifications they lay out, the required products, materials, and crucially, the standards of workmanship. The design team and the owner set these standards. So quality isn't just, does it look nice? It's, does it meet the specific contractual requirements? That's the core insight.
So it's defined, just not always in simple numbers.
Exactly. And you manage it through proactive and reactive measures. The material distinguishes between quality assurance, QA, and quality control, QC.
Okay, break that down for us. QA versus QC.
QA is about prevention, building quality in. It involves setting standards for how things are made fabrication and how they're bought procurement, trying to stop defects before they happen.
Makes sense. And QC.
QC is about detection, checking the work after it's done or as it's being done. This is where you see field tests, inspections, and reviewing things called submittals, verifying the quality is actually there.
Where do these quality standards actually come from?
Multiple places. The owner has requirements, building codes, set minimum legal standards, and then there's just, accepted good construction practice, industry norms.
And the contractor has a pretty big stake in meeting these standards, right? It's not optional.
Absolutely massive stake. If work doesn't meet the specs, the architect can reject it, period. And the contractor usually has to fix it, replace it, whatever it takes.
On their own dime.
On their own dime. And crucially, usually with no extra time added to the schedule, so it hits the budget and the timeline. Plus, a reputation for shoddy work. That's poison for getting future jobs.
Okay, let's dig into those specific quality verification methods. Submittals came up. What exactly are they doing?
Submittals are things like shop drawings, product data sheets, samples. The contractor submits these to the architect before buying or installing the materials. It's a crucial checkpoint.
Why before?
So the design team can verify, yes, this specific window model or this exact type of brick meets the requirements we specified in the contract. It catches potential issues before the wrong thing is ordered or built, saves a huge amount of potential rework.
Smart. What about the hands-on tests and inspections? What gets checked?
All sorts of things. Could be testing steel welds back at the fabrication shop. Could be testing concrete strength on site as it's poured. Checking soil compaction before foundations go in. Inspections are often visual. Is the flashing installed right to keep water out? Are structural connections correct?
The material also mentioned qualifications and visual checks.
Yeah, qualifications might mean needing certified welders for certain jobs or installers with specific training for complex systems. Fabrication requirements set tolerances for manufactured items, and visual inspections are constant. The site super should be checking work daily. The architect does periodic site visits too. But, and the material stresses this, just because the architect doesn't spot something doesn't let the contractor off the hook. The contractor is ultimately responsible for meeting the spec.
Got it. And the last one was commissioning. Sounds comprehensive.
It is. Usually for bigger, more complex projects, independent specialists come in and rigorously test all the building systems, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, everything.
Making sure it all works together as designed.
Exactly. And they often train the building's facility managers, too. It's essential for things like LE&A Green Building Certification, provides documented proof the building performs as intended.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. A huge chunk of the GC's job is managing subcontractors. The material frames this as a very hands-on role.
Oh, absolutely. The GC owns the whole project outcome. That means managing the time, cost, and quality of every single sub. The site superintendent is the key figure here, the GC's eyes and ears, directly overseeing those specialty contractors.
How does the GC keep all those different subs marching to the same beat, schedule-wise?
Well, the master schedule is usually part of the subcontract itself. Subs have to provide their own detailed schedules for their work and keep the super updated. This lets the super see the whole picture, spot conflicts, anticipate problems.
And the GC needs to make sure the site is ready for them.
Critically important. You can't have the painter show up if the drywall isn't finished, taped, and sanded. The GC ensures the preceding work is done, the area is clean, materials are there. And while the overall schedule is set, the super is constantly confirming and adjusting exact start dates, giving subs fair warning to get their crews ready.
And it's not just about schedules, but watching the work itself.
Constantly. The super needs to be reviewing subs' work regularly, maybe even daily, giving feedback, catching mistakes early.
Early correction is cheaper.
Way cheaper and less disruptive than fixing it later. This is especially true if it's a sub you haven't worked with much before. You need to build that trust.
The material also highlighted regular meetings between the GC and subs. What's the point of those?
Usually weekly. They're vital for communication. Problems get aired, solutions discussed, roadblocks tackled. There's usually an agenda, and meeting minutes are kept.
Documenting decisions.
Exactly. It creates a record. And if the design changes new drawings, sketches from the architect, the GC has to get that info to the affected subs immediately. Tools like BIM building information modeling are really helping here too. That 3D digital model improves coordination immensely.
And keeping subs happy financially also matters. Facilitating payments.
Definitely. Helping subs get their payment requests processed smoothly is good business. It keeps them financially healthy, which is good for the project. Happy subs work better, and it might give you better prices next time. It's win-win.
But things don't always go smoothly. Sometimes subs run into trouble. What are the warning signs a GC should look out for?
Yeah, the material lists a few red flags. Not enough workers showing up consistently, delays getting materials delivered, being slow with submittals, suddenly asking for payments faster than the contract allows. These could all signal financial distress.
And if a GC spots these signs, what should they do to protect the project?
First, figure out the real potential impact on the overall schedule. Then documentation becomes king. Meeting notes, letters, photos, everything.
Covering themselves.
Partly, yes, but also establishing the facts. The GC should also try to help the sub if possible, maybe lend some equipment, adjust the schedule slightly, but they also need to be firm. Put it in writing. Here are the consequences if you don't catch up: back charges, penalties, maybe even termination.
And the worst case, the sub just walks off the job. What then?
That's serious. First call, lawyer, immediately. Make sure every step is legally correct. Then, formal written notice to the sub. You're in default. Find ways to get the work done, use GC's own forces, hire another sub quickly. Inventory any materials the sub left behind those might offset costs. And crucially, notify the sub's bonding company.
This surety.
Exactly. They provided a financial guarantee. This whole situation, as Material points out, shows why selecting subs carefully in the first place is so incredibly important. One bad apple can really damage the whole project.
Finally, the material brought up a bigger trend: the growing focus on building performance and sustainability. How's that changing the contractor's world?
It's a huge shift. People care more about how buildings affect health, the environment. You've got stricter energy codes, voluntary standards like LED gaining traction, owners demanding more efficiency. This whole green building movement is changing how projects are run, the materials used, even the roles people play.
How does that translate to the actual job site and the GC's role?
Several ways. The material highlights increased need for cooperation. Achieving high performance needs everyone, designers, GC, subs, collaborating really closely from day one. One trade messing up can compromise the whole building's efficiency rating.
So more teamwork needed.
Definitely. Site procedures are changing too. More focus on recycling waste, controlling stormwater, minimizing pollution, maybe restricting certain types of equipment. Contractors are dealing with new, sometimes unfamiliar, sustainable products and materials.
Learning curve there.
Big time. Plus, new technology not just in the building itself, like smart systems, but also in managing the construction process, like we mentioned with BIM. Waste management is different too, thinking about reuse, recycling streams. And documentation proving you met the green standards often requires a lot more paperwork. It's a constant evolution.
It definitely sounds like managing time, cost, and quality is getting more complex, not less.
No doubt about it. It demands a really proactive, detailed approach, great communication, and understanding not just the building part, but the financial, legal, and now the sustainability angles too.
So wrapping this up, we've seen it's not just three separate boxes: time, cost, quality. They're deeply woven together. Managing them effectively means constant tracking, smart evaluation, understanding the root causes, and taking decisive action. Setting goals, watching progress, figuring out why when things slip, and having the right strategies to stay in control.
Couldn't have said it better. And, as the industry keeps changing, with sustainability and tech becoming even more central, it really makes you think, doesn't it, for you listening? How do you see the general contractor's role evolving even further in the coming years because of these pressures?
That's a great question to chew on, and it highlights how these core ideas track, evaluate, control, they apply way beyond just building sites, right? Think about your own work, your own projects. How could these principles help you? Thanks for diving deep with us today.